Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing so far this morning? You guys doing well? Awesome. Well, guys, listen, like Dan said, it is 2021. Can you guys believe it? Nobody can. Listen, I'll tell you what, I've been excited to start this new year with you guys. You know, I think that all of us have a lot of vision that God's put in our hearts. You know, individually, I think that as we look at New Year's resolutions, as we look at the beginning of a new year, I think that really what we're saying is, what does God have for us, right? What does God have for us? What is He doing in our lives? What is it that He has that He wants to help us move forward with, right? That's what vision is all about. And this week, really, what I want to do is I just want to talk to you about vision, about personal vision for you and about vision for Manna Church. Because, you know, when we say Manna Church, what we're saying is we're talking about the group of people that are right here in this room, right? We're a group of people that are doing life together, that are serving God together, that are choosing to attend service right now in this local building right now together. We're just a group of families. We're a group of people. If you're joining us online, you're a part of that group. Even though you're at home, comfortable, probably on your couch or something, kicked up, drinking a cup of coffee, maybe some hot chocolate or something like that, right? Look, we have some out there. If you want to run out real quick and get some coffee or hot chocolate in the building, like, you won't offend me. I get it, you know. Good cup of hot chocolate right now would be good, you know. It's kind of cold and rainy this morning. So yeah, I got a couple folks taking it, you know. Go ahead, take your time. But now listen, you know, this week what we want to do is I just want to lay out some ideas from you by Scripture, talking about our vision here at Man Church and our vision for you as individual people. You know, and talking about the growth track, January 24th is when we're going to kick off our growth track for this next cycle, okay? So starting at 5 p.m. here at Manna Church at the building, we are going to be kicking off that growth track at 5 p.m., free childcare. We'd love for you guys to join us. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Manna Church, if you'd like to know how you can plug in, it's definitely the group for you. And it's not just about Manna Church, it's about us investing into the lives of people, helping them take their next steps with God. That's why we're going to start with Next Step this year on January 24th at 5 p.m. Let me start by reading a verse to you. It's Isaiah 46, 8 and 10, and it's going to 8 through 10. It's going to kind of set us up for today. It says, "Remember this and show yourselves men. Recall to mind, O you transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning." And here's a verse, a part of the verse I really want you to kind of clue into here. It says, "And from ancient times, things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure." So you see there in verse 10, it says, "And from ancient times, things that are not yet done." You know that God has some things that He has planned from the very beginning of human history that He has planned for your life that you have not yet realized. You have not yet stepped into. You have not yet realized the purpose and all the vision that God has for you in your life. You know, the same is true for Manna Church. There are some things that God has for Manna Church going forward, even in 2021 and even beyond, that God has for us that we want to step into. But let me tell you, don't throw away everything that you've experienced in 2020. Right? I know some of us probably, as we're thinking about it, we're saying, man, 2020 is over. Let's just forget that year ever existed, right? I mean, let's just be honest. Some of us feel that way about 2020. You know, all the stuff that's happened with COVID, all the stuff that's happened with the elections and in politics and all the different shutdowns and all the different ways we've had to mitigate that and understand that in each of our own lives and our families' lives and our work lives. I mean, some of it has just been a pain all the way around. Am I right? I mean, it's just been a pain. And then there's all sorts of things that have happened that we've seen loved ones and how they've responded compared to how we've responded. And it's just been a year where we've had to try to navigate how we even talk to people, how we don't, regardless of how you feel and how you've processed all of this. I hope that you have done that. I think it's required some deep thought on how we relate and connect to other people. You don't want to just take it and just be like, oh, it doesn't matter, let's just move on. No, I think if anything, God is saying, hey, there's an opportunity here for God's people, His church, to be able to relate to people in a whole new way. I think that God wants us to continue to show love and continue to show that we have a purpose in the midst of what can seem like a purposeless year. In verse 9 it says, "Remember the former things of old, for I am God." God has some things that He may have already placed in your heart, that He may have already placed in your minds years ago, that maybe it's time to pick up on some of those things again. Maybe there's some vision that's kind of that's been cast off, that God's put in your heart that you want to step into again. So now, if we have some vision that God's put in our heart, if we have some purpose that we know that we're supposed to step into, how are we supposed to just go about that? Are we supposed to just wake up one morning and say, all right, listen, today is going to be the day that I fulfill all of my purpose? Scripture doesn't even say that. Look at Luke 14, 28 through 30. It says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? That's a good idea. Have you ever seen one of those houses you drive by for years and it just never got finished? I'm sure you guys have seen that before. Has anybody seen that before? Maybe you've been in that boat, right? You started a house, you're going to pay for it in cash, and you're going to start to build it, and you just never completed it. It says, estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it. For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Listen, if God wants you to do some things, you have to plan on how it is that you're going to do it. Let's take, for example, maybe God's placed in your heart at some point in your life. This is just an example. You could apply it to any analogy. Maybe God's placed in your heart that you're going to be a doctor. Let's say you're going to be a doctor, and at one point, you're going to actually be treating and being with patients. You know how long it takes to the point in which God places in your heart that you want to be a doctor, to the point in which you're actually treating patients? I'm talking 10 years plus, right? You might have some time where you're operating in that in school, but where you actually maybe open up your own clinic and you're treating patients. That's a 10-year plan. That's a long time. Can you imagine in 10 years from now, when God has placed that in your heart right now, and that position opens up, that God has planned just for you to step into, and you didn't go to medical school? Do you think that you're going to get hired in to be that doctor? Probably, I hope not. I'm probably not going to come to see you, right? It's oh, hey, I'm a doctor. And obviously our laws wouldn't even allow this, but I'm a doctor and I've never went to medical school and I really don't know anything about medicine, but God has called me to be a doctor, so I'm going to step in and I'm going to do your surgery today. No, sorry. It's not going to happen, right? We would never do that. And yet in so many other things in our life, that God has placed vision in our hearts, we just say, hey, today we're just going to step into it because God's put this purpose and vision in my heart, thinking that there's no preparation or planning or anything that we need to do to be able to accomplish it. Doesn't even make sense in the doctor scheme, but of course when there's other things in our lives, we say, oh yeah, I can do that because that's just how it works in Christianity. That's how it works with God and me because, God just has some things in my life and He spoke some things to me, and I'm just going to step into them today without any training or any vision really that's going to happen. So listen, how do we actually develop ourselves? What I want to do is I want to take really just a few minutes to talk to you about some personal development in some steps and vision, and then talk to you about some things that we have coming up at Manna Church. And there's no big announcements that are going to blow your mind or anything like that, but every year at Manna Church, I always pray for the new year. I always pray and I say, God, what is it that you have for us as a church? Now, I know that God has spoken to you some things individually, and really the beginning of the sermon today is all about the personal vision that God has spoken to you. Because I don't want you to, step away from the beginning of this year, not taking some time to say, God, what is it that you have for me this year? It's different than a New Year's resolution. Whether you like New Year's resolutions or you don't, that your year is going to continue past your New Year's resolution, I promise you. You're going to exist, hopefully, at the end of the year, right? That's what we're all hoping for. And at the end of this year, you're going to look back and you're going to say to yourself, what happened with my year? Well, my hope for you is at the end of this year, you can look back at 2021 and say, wow, I really invested myself into some things that God led me into. And I promise you, if you do that, regardless of what your end of your year looks like, you can have a fulfilled year because God has led you down those steps. So let me give you 4 key truths about developing personal vision. The first one is this, is that vision comes from God. Vision comes from God. It doesn't come from the dream that we had last night. A dream could come from God, but I'm saying it doesn't come from the dream we had last night or the little feeling we had while we were eating lunch the day before. We're going to pray, we're going to seek God, and we're going to ask Him what plans does He have for us in our lives. Listen, and dreaming and vision are 2 different things. Look at Proverbs 28:19. It says, those who work their land will have abundant food. Do you hear that? Those that work their land will have abundant food. Meaning that if God has placed some vision in you, God has placed some purpose in you, and you work that vision, you will have abundant food. You will see some things that come out of it. But those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty. There's a difference between a dream and vision. Now, God's going to put some dreams in your heart. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those things that we grab a hold of, that we say, man, I'm going to accomplish this, and it's gone today, or it's here today, and it's gone tomorrow. I mean, I've had some of those things in my life. I mean, when I was a kid, I was sure that I was going to at least play arena football. I never even played high school football. You know what I'm talking about? There was an Arena 2 football team near our town when I was growing up, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to be a walk-on player. I mean, I'm like barely 6 foot, never lifted weights, some, but hardly a day in my life. I can run a little bit. That's good. You might not be able to catch me if it's over 5 miles, right? That's a good thing. Not that we're probably going to run for 5 miles and catch me before that. But guess what? I never played Arena 2 football. NFL football. I knew I couldn't do that, but I thought I could play these guys, the truth is I'd have got demolished. It was in one day, out another. I'm sure you guys have had those kinds of things in your heart. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. The first thing is vision comes from God. But listen, you want to start with who you are. Start with who you are. God has already put some great things in your hands. He's already put some great things in your heart. Maybe he has a burden for, a type of ministry that you want to start, or a small group that you want to lead, or that you want to be a part of. Maybe it's something to do right here on Sunday morning. Maybe it's about playing an instrument here on the worship team, or serving in Manna Kids. God has put some things in your heart. You have a way about you that is better, or not better like you're better than another person, but you have more skill in a certain area than other people do. I promise that. And God has put that in you. Start with what's already in your hand, and your skills, and your gifts, and your abilities. We say in Leader Step in the growth track, which we're about to start, is you can't steer a parked car. Ever try to steer a parked car? It is tough. Now, I know, of course, with power steering, you turn it on, you can kind of turn the wheel a little bit. Do you guys remember back in the day, now I'm speaking like way back, right? You guys ever drive a car that didn't have power steering? You guys ever driven one of those? Yeah, absolutely. My dad had an old Ford truck. It wasn't like a 150. It was like a C100. It was like the old school metal frame. It was like half rusted out because we lived in Michigan and we moved it, to Florida. It was this old truck, right? And you guys thinking, why was it rusted out? Well, in Michigan, they put salt on the road. And back in the day, when it was metal cars, that salt that was on the road to melt the snow, it would rust the vehicles, right? You guys ever live up north? It was a thing. Now cars are plastic, so you don't have to worry about it, right? It's like no big deal. Other than brake lines. My mechanic knows all about that. I had a brake line deal, yeah. My mechanic buddy, he knows all about my bad brake line. So he's like, get rid of that car. Get rid of that car. My dad had an old truck, and it didn't have any power steering. And, back in the day when you were a young man, you used to be able to drive a lot younger than you are today. So 12, 13, 14, my dad put me on his lap or let me, sit in the car, and he'd let me steer the car. Well, he didn't have power steering. I remember every time we'd take off from a stop sign, we're going to turn right or something, I try to turn that wheel before I started to move. Well, if you don't have power steering and your car's not rolling, you cannot turn that wheel when you're just barely moving. It's impossible. At least not for a 12 or 13-year-old kid, right? So I'm trying to turn, and he's like, you got to roll the wheels, son. You can't steer a parked car. It's the same thing with our life, okay? There's some things that God has put in you, and you're waiting for that big vision, that big purpose. You're waiting for that amazing thing that God has put in your heart. Listen, that's there from God. But the best way to accomplish the big things that God has for you is to start the wheels rolling. Because the truth is, you really might not yet know which way you're supposed to turn. When the wheels are rolling and your hand's on the wheel, you get to see some things that are happening. When you turn that wheel, you're going to be able to easily direct where you're supposed to go. Don't think you're going to accomplish the great things that God has truly put in your life if you don't start the wheels moving. That's why you start with things that are in your hand. Well, I don't know if these are the things that are going to accomplish those great things. Well, you're not going to find that out until you start with what you already have. You really don't know who you are until you realize who you're not. And sometimes, especially if you're young, get out there and try as many things as you can, because as you realize who you're not, it starts to guide you into the people of who we are. It's important. Let's try some things. So the first one is people dream. Again, with Proverbs 28:19. The second idea of developing truths, of developing personal vision, is the vision must be clear. The vision must be clear. Look at Habakkuk 2:1-3. It says, I will stand at my guard post and station myself on the watchtower, and I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and how I may reply when I am reprimanded. Then the Lord will answer me And then the Lord answered me and said, write down the vision and inscribe it clearly on tablets, so that the one who reads it may run. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hurries towards the goal, and it will not fail. Though it delays, wait for it will certainly come. It will not delay long. I remember the very first time that I wanted to run a marathon. I think it was in 2012 or 2013. I'd actually moved here to Anger and started here as the associate pastor at Manna Church at the time. And I had a friend of mine, the old pastor that was here, Jonathan Fletcher. Many of you guys know him. And he was already running a lot. He's running marathons and half marathons. I don't think it ain't done like any real long distance, 50 mile or 100 miles or anything yet. And he's like, hey, why don't you run a marathon with me? And I was like, oh, brother. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I had played soccer like all my life. So I was like, I had run, but there's a difference in when you get up to run 5 or 10 or 15 miles and you're not playing a sport. Because in sports, you're going to stop and you're going to, take breaks. Even in soccer, there's breaks. And he's like, no, why don't you run with me? I think the furthest I had ever run was like 3 miles in the sense of I'm just going to go run the day. I just thought, why would I want to run unless somebody's chasing me? You know what I'm saying? It's like that old joke, if a bear's chasing, how fast you have to run, only faster than your buddy, right? Because the bear's going to get your buddy before he gets you. I mean, that was my mentality. It's like, I don't need to run. I mean, I'm good. He's like, no, why don't you run a marathon with me? I said, all right, that sounds good. I'll do it. It'll be fun, just to hang out. So let's do it. Signed up for a marathon. Had never run further than 3 miles before. And so I get up and I decide, okay, well, if I can run 5 miles, that's, almost 20%, right, of the marathon. I'm like, I can do that. I'm just going to run 5 miles. I got up and I ran 5 miles one day, about killed myself. And I ran, I ran the plan, right? I did one after another, and after another. I had a training plan that I pinned to the refrigerator, and every day I would just get up and I would run how many miles that were on that plan. It was clear what I needed to do. If I didn't have that plan on that refrigerator, I promise you, I would have never run that first marathon, ever. I completed. I did the New York City Marathon in 2014. It was great. Had a great time. Continued running since then, and I've enjoyed it. Surprisingly. Although if you ask me, yeah, should I go run, run marathons? I'm like, do it with a friend. It's fun. You know what I mean? Do it with a friend. It's fun. It's the same thing with life, guys. It's the exact same thing. The vision has to be clear. Whatever God's put in front of you, you have to have the plan. Even if you could become a doctor without going to school, you know what schooling does? It helps you organize the plan in which you're going to need to be able to accomplish the end goal and the end purpose. The problem is that there's a lot of things that God's probably put in your heart that isn't quite as easy as, going to school, because in school they have it all laid out for you. Now, maybe you want to be a pastor, or you have, a job that requires a degree, or, something like that, and school is a part of it. That's great. But there's some things in your life that you have to come up with your own plan. You have to write the vision down clearly. If God has put something in your heart that you know that you want to accomplish, then you have to write it down. You have to come up with a plan. Make it clear. It says, inscribe it clearly on tablets so that one who reads it may run. What does that mean? It means that when you forget about what God's put down in your heart, that you can look at that vision on tablets. Maybe you won't inscribe it in stone tablets, although that would be pretty cool. Maybe burn it in a piece of wood, bark, or something like that, right? That'd be pretty awesome. We're probably not going to do that, but you can write down a piece of paper. You can write it down on a computer, and then when you forget about why you're doing what you're doing, you can go back and look at that plan. And when you do that, you'll find yourself having a lot more motivation. So the first thing is vision comes from God. The second is the vision must be clear. The third thing is once the vision is clear, work the plan. Proverbs 14:18 says, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, get this, shining ever brighter till the full day of light. Meaning that it grows and it grows and it grows. Don't stop when you start. Because honestly, a lot of us, what we do is, and some of us stop before we even start. Right? Have you ever noticed, especially around New Year's resolutions, I feel like this happens a lot to us, that maybe we have this goal of losing a certain amount of weight. So what we do is we read a lot about it, right? And it's good to research a diet or some type of new eating habit you want to get into, but we read a lot about it. We talk to a lot of people about it. We find out what they're going to do. We set up our plan. We do it. We've talked and we talk and we talk and we talk, and we almost get this satisfaction out of talking as if we've already done it. When the reality is you have never stopped eating the cookie at night that you need to be able to help lose the weight, right? You know you're going to stop eating the cookie. You know what ingredients need to go in the cookie. You know what plan you need to do to stop eating the cookie, but you've never stopped eating the cookie. And yet somehow we feel like we've stopped eating the cookie. The reality is we haven't. That comes a lot when we read the Bible sometimes, right? At the beginning of the year, we have a brand new Bible reading plan I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And what happens is that we say, okay, I'm going to read the Bible. And we research about the Bible. We look in the table of contents about all the books in the Bible. We decide what book of the Bible we're going to read. We come up with a plan to read the Bible. We're going to read the Bible on, every day. We're going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're going to read the Bible. We talk to our neighbor about how we're going to read the Bible. We talk to our kids and spouse about how we're going to read the Bible. Then we go on social media and we post about how we're going to read the Bible. And then Monday comes at 6 o'clock and we don't get up and read the Bible. And yet somehow we feel like we have read the Bible because we got all the satisfaction out of doing it while we never did. Can I tell you, some of the best plans are best said after we start it. Sometimes just keep it to yourself. Not because you don't want to share. Share it with some people around you. Don't hijack that process and get the satisfaction out of doing it when you've never actually done it. That happens all the time to people. Once the vision is clear, work the plan. All right, let's get really practical now. Number 4 on establishing personal vision goals is this: establish clear goals. What will you do first, then second, and so forth? Actually write down the things that you are going to do. What is it that you need to do to move forward to the next thing? The first thing is you want to make it relevant. So the goal fits the vision. If you want to become a doctor, then chances are you're not going to be able to, take your pilot's license at the exact same time. You know why? Because the amount of time that you're going to have to invest into being a doctor is going to require some sacrifices in your life. Anything worth doing well, right? Obviously, we know this. Anything's worth doing, or anything that's great in our lives is worth doing well. That's 100%. And if it's worth doing well, it's going to take some time in your life. It's going to take some sacrifice in your life. Don't think that you're going to accomplish some awesome, amazing things in your life if you're not willing to sacrifice some other things. It's just not going to happen. And what you need to make sure that they're relevant, that they go on. I had a mentor once told me that every time, think of where you're trying to go as a dartboard. You guys ever play darts? I know a lot of people don't really play darts as much anymore. When I was a kid, my dad and my uncles and my family used to always play darts together, and pinochle and dominoes and all those old school games, right? So we used to have this dartboard in the garage where our pool table was, and my mentor would tell me that every time you make a decision in life, treat it as if you're throwing a dart towards the dartboard as you want to get as close to the goal as you can. But if you never release a dart, then you're never going to hit anywhere around the dartboard. The problem is that many people, we're just throwing darts. We're just like, okay, the dartboard's over there, but as long as I'm active and as long as I'm busy, you have to make sure that it's relevant to what God has put in your heart. Another thing is you want to make sure that it's significant, meaning that you want to make sure that it's bigger than you. God's plans and purpose and vision for your life is bigger than you. If you look at it and you say, oh, I can accomplish that easy, God's got more. Pray more. Dig deeper. God's got something more. Advance more than what your natural lineage gives you. Meaning that there's some things that we have been born into. Every single one of us. If your dad owns 10 businesses and all of those businesses are going to be given to you, probably it's not a significant goal enough for you. Now, owning one business might be a significant goal enough for you. It has to do with where you start. It has to do with what you're given. It's what faithfulness is all about. It's what are you going to do with what God gives you. So you can't look at someone else because where they start is not where you started. So you can't say to yourself, what my goal isn't significant when you look at someone else. Because depending on what they were given, it might not be a significant goal at all for them to continue to run the 10 family businesses that their father gave them. That truly might not be significant for them. But that could be way over your head. So don't feel like what God's given you is less than or more than someone else. But make sure that it's significant. Make sure that it's bigger than you. The other thing is, make sure that it's realistic when you establish these goals. Make sure that they're doable. Sometimes I fall into this process. So, listen, I think I got the big vision, I got the big purpose, I got the big plan, and I try to accomplish something in a year that I couldn't accomplish in 10 years, right? I'm going to be a doctor. Well, that means medical school needs to be done the next 6 months. That's not going to happen, right? Obviously, I'm not trying to become a doctor. But things in life, they have to have realistic goals. The other thing is, they need to be measurable. If you can't measure it in some way, how will you know when you fail or when you succeed? And you have to be willing to look at the failures that you experience along your way in your process to accomplish these goals. Why? Because if you fail and you're not realistic about it, then you're just going to be blind and you're going to continue to do the same thing. If you just continue to do the same thing, then you're going to get the same result, right? That's the old definition of insanity, right? What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same things, the same ways, expecting different results. Don't do the same things, the same ways, and expect a different result. It's not going to happen. That goes back to if you want to accomplish something great in your life, then you may have to say no to some other really good things. I have a little note on my desk that I've kind of written on a sticky note that I look at sometimes. Sometimes you have to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best. Sometimes you have to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best. Most of the time, I think, as believers, we're not looking at a bunch of things in life that are bad. Sometimes that happens. Most of the time, I think we're looking at a bunch of things in life that are good. The problem is that if we only accomplish all the good things, we may never accomplish the best thing. Don't live a life of mediocrity because you're only accomplishing good things. God has great things for you. The great things for you, you got to pray, you got to seek, you got to find out what he's calling you to, and you got to accomplish those things. That's going to mean you're going to have to say no to some of the really good things in life. Because if you want to accomplish the great things, it's going to require great time and strength and effort. The last one is for the personal goals, establishing clear goals, is make it personal. It needs to fit who you are, your skills, your skill set, your experiences, etc. Right? We talked about that a little bit already. You want to make sure that it's a part of who you are. Now, sometimes God calls the businessman, the New York City stockbroker businessman to the jungles in Africa as a missionary. That happens sometimes, but I promise you that is the exception. That is the exception. Listen, I am not, right, at my age, at 31 years old, no, I'm a little older than that, but just a little bit. So at my age, there's no way that I'm going to be an NFL quarterback. Do we all agree on that? Yes. My wife said yes first. She should say yes last. I mean, man, dang, honey. No, it's true. It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. Why? I have to make it personal. That goal wouldn't fit who I am. There are some goals in your life that might not fit who you are, but they're going to fit somebody else's. It's important that we don't get trapped in the comparison trap, right? It's so easy to do. So let me talk about some vision that we have for Manna Church, just as we finish today, okay? Just a few things that I want to talk about. And I know that a lot of us have some personal vision that God is pouring into our lives, but I want to remind us that we're not just doing life alone this year. I mean, the people that we're sitting around right now, that are watching online, that aren't even here this morning right now, we are doing life with them too. That is a part of about what it's like to be a part of a local church. It's about recognizing that we're doing life with other people. And I know that, we all have friends and family, even outside of this room, but also as a part of this church, God has called us to be together. At least if you've said, hey, I want to be a part of Manna Church here. I want to encourage us this year to really recognize that as a church, we are called to do some things together with the people that are here in this room. Make an effort to get to know the people that you're sitting around. And some of this vision is not as organized as I would like it to be, but I feel like it's from God. A part of a job for a pastor of a local church, of a local group of people, is to hear from God for what God is doing for that local group of people, for the whole group, right? That's a part of what God calls a pastor to do. He's going to call you to do some things personally, but he's going to call me to do some things and to speak to us about some things that he calls us to do as a group. So a part of that is, I feel like God has spoken at least two things right now, is to prepare the place and to prepare the person. Prepare the place and to prepare the person. What does it mean to prepare the place? Well, to prepare the place has a lot of meanings, really. Some of it has to do with our services. I'll talk about that first. Some of our services here are part online, are live, and some of it's online. Do you know that our online audience has continued to grow over the whole coronavirus aspect? We have people that are watching online right now that don't even live in the state of North Carolina. And we want to prepare the place. We want to prepare an experience for them online that's going to allow them to have a great church experience too. The truth is that when you think about the gospel and you think about, how the word of God is transmitted throughout the ages, there's no reason in our day and age why you can't have meaningful connection with people that live in another state. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure you have family, right now in this room that you have meaningful connection with that do not live in the state of North Carolina. And yet you still love them and you care for them, probably some of your closest family. Maybe it's your children or your parents or a brother or a sister. You would never in the world think of them as not a part of your family because they don't live right here. I don't think of someone as a part of Manna Church only because they're in the vicinity of our building on Sunday mornings. It's a family, right? It's God's family. Imagine if God only considered his family those that were in the vicinity of where he is. Now, the presence of God is everywhere, but I'm talking about heaven. Imagine if we were only God's family when we get to heaven. No, we're God's family now here, right? I think we have to open up our minds a little bit on that. So I want to prepare the person and I want to prepare the place. We're making some upgrades to our online services. We're trying to make some upgrades to our service experience. You'll see some more video announcements. Why are we doing that? Because we're trying to merge an experience for both live and online. We want to make it a good experience for both live and online. What does it mean to prepare the person? Well, I know that as a part of Manna Church, we do three things. We love God, we love each other, and we love the world. We have inspiring Sunday morning experiences, or I hope they're inspiring, right? We're hoping to meet with God every time that we get together on a Sunday morning, whether it be live or online. That's my hope. That's my prayer all week. I pray that the worship sounds good. I pray that the sermon is organized and preached well. But you know what I really pray for? I pray that the presence of God will show up. That's what we need. That's what all of us need in our life. And not just on Sunday mornings, but for all of us. So I want to prepare the person for God. I know that we have small groups here at Manna Church. And we have a small group Sunday coming up in just a few weeks. I'll give you those dates in just a minute. I want to see us involved in a small group. And not just for the sake of saying, hey, I'm in a small group. But actually hanging out with other people, kind of that iron sharpens iron, right? Don't just go to a small group or get around a bunch of people that think and act just like you do. Because the truth is, you probably won't be sharpened as much as you could as if you were around people that don't agree with everything the way that you do. You know, that's what the church is all about, right? Even in the world, that's why God calls us out into the world, around other people that don't think and believe like we do. Not so we can beat them over the head with what we believe, so they can see our life and say, wow, that looks really good. I'd love to have some of that, right? I mean, I hope that our marriages and our families and the way that we live and our finances represent what the Bible and the biblical principles show so much that people see that and say, man, I wish my marriage could be like that. Man, I wish my family was like that. I wish my kids respected me and obeyed me that way. Now, we're going to have perfect families? No, I'm not saying that. But our families, our lives, our marriages, our relationships, our forgiveness should look different than people that don't know Jesus. We should be. Because God should have changed some things inside of us, so we should be different. It's a process. You know, hopefully those of us that have known the Lord longer have had that process shape us even more. Man, if we've known the Lord 20 or 30 or 40 years, I hope that the way we relate to people is different than people that just got saved a year ago. Why? Because we've allowed God to work on us over all those years. That's how the world sees the light of Jesus inside of us. Prepare the place, prepare the person. One of the ways I want to do that is I have a Bible reading plan. A couple of the Manna Church locations are doing it. Not all of them, but a few of them are. It's a particular reading plan. It is the New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs. So far, every other year, we've done the entire Bible in a whole year. The problem with that is there's just been a lot of reading, depending on how much you read. Now, it's only about 15 or 20 minutes to read the Bible in a year every day, right? You read 15 or 20 minutes every day, and you read the whole Bible in a year. The problem with that, honestly, is just that we live really busy lives. And I'm not saying that it's not worth 20 minutes, but if we're going to spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes in the Bible, I don't want it to be just reading. I want us to read the Bible and read the words and interact with it a little bit. Have some time with God. Have some opportunity to ask Him what He wants you to understand in that scripture that you just read. Again, this is, a part of the community. So there is a Bible reading plan. A lot of us probably read on the app called YouVersion. It's just a really popular Bible reading app. If you don't, you can download it, and you can download the plan. It's just read the Bible in the year, New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs. You can go to our Facebook page. I posted a link to it there. The cool thing about if you go to the Facebook page is there's a group plan. So there's about a dozen of us or 15 of us that are already in it. You saw the Facebook post that I posted a couple days ago. If you click on that link, I'm the host, and it takes you right to that Bible reading plan. So there's comments that we've already started sharing, and we can all read the plan together. And to be honest with you, it's a little bit of accountability. You see when other people read. You see, other people see when you read. Can I be honest? I know sometimes the church is kind of shied away from that. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of accountability. That's okay. And I know sometimes you may push back from that. And you may be like, oh, Eric, I don't know if that's really a good thing. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. It's a great thing. A little bit of accountability, a little bit of, and I don't mean this in a bad way, a little bit of competition, some brothers in the house. There's nothing wrong with that, right, guys? We like that. Look, I played basketball with my sons yesterday at Jack Marley Park. I played to win, y'all. I played to win. Now no, that just sounds like pride, so I can't say that. I'll let my boys talk about my skill on the court. So y'all should ask my boys. No, I'm just kidding. I want us to read a little less, but I want us to engage the Bible a whole lot more. Read a little less, engage a whole lot more. And that might not speak to you. If you have no problem reading through the Bible in the whole year and you want to do that, man, knock yourself out. Do it. So if you want to know more about that, you can text the word Bible to the number that's on the screen right now, and you'll be able to do that. Can we put that Bible on the screen? There we go. So if you see that number there, that Bible, or that number on the screen, text the word Bible to it, and that just goes basically to my phone. And so if you text me that, I'll send you the link to the Bible reading plan that we'll all read together, okay? Another thing is starting January 11th, we're going to start 7 days of prayer and fasting. So that's a week from tomorrow. Next week, the whole sermon is really going to be a setup for that, about prayer, what prayer is and what fasting is, how they work together, and how that week can jumpstart your year. I'm going to say this at the end. I'm going to say it now too. I want to tell you, everything that I just said today about vision and planning, just shoulder that till next week. I don't think I've ever preached a sermon and said, hey, don't do that right now. But wait until next week, because I want to be honest with you. You want to pray before you plan. You want to pray before you plan. You want to seek God and see what He is saying to you. And throughout January 11th through the 17th, I think it's going to be a significant time for our church, because it's where we set aside some time and we say, God, what is it you're going to do? We're going to talk about different types of fasting and different ways you can do that next week. I think community is important this year. I think that if everybody could join a serve team on Sunday mornings, that would be awesome. At least a small group. If you haven't been through the growth track, I know we talk about it every week. I would love to see anybody that hasn't done the growth track join it, become a part of it. I think we need to, as a church, invite people to church. Is it just so we can get people in these four walls? No. Just this morning, in our Bible reading plan, we're reading through first the book of Philippians in the New Testament. It's not just like Matthew through the end of the New Testament. It jumps around the books a little bit. So we're reading in Philippians, and it talks clearly that we are the light of the world. And how do we do that? By the way that we just talked about earlier, about how we share in our relationships with each other. But being the light means that we have to show some people and share with some people that what we believe, and invite them to some things. Invite some people to your small group. Invite some people to sit in the seats that are surrounding you right now. We have some room. In fact, we're about to make some more room so everybody can feel comfortable. I want you guys to invite folks. This isn't please invite people just so the church can be bigger or that, or compare numbers. It has nothing to do with that. It's because right now in our community, there's a ton of hurting people that don't know where to turn to for hope and love. And we've already found that. We found that in Jesus. And God doesn't want us to hide that revelation. God has actually given it to us so that way we could advance His kingdom around the planet. You know, if He wanted you to just hide it, you just go to heaven the second that you got saved. I mean, what better place are we going to know and love Jesus perfectly than in heaven? If that's all He wanted for us after salvation, man, other than those of us that were just going to tell people about Jesus, we would just go to heaven the second we get saved. But yet we don't. We stay here. Why? So we can just live the life for ourselves? No, so we can invite other people. People need Jesus. January 10th, which is next week, we're going to 2 services. We're going to have a service at 9:30 and one at 11. If you come at 10:30, you will be at the end of the first service. So don't come next week at 10:30. One at 9:30 and one at 11. Now, you might say, Eric, man, I don't know. Does that sound like a good idea? You know, I want you to always be willing to say, I think God said. Can I tell you, I think that's a good practice. I think God said. I think that God says right now is a good time to go to 2 services. One is because there's a great amount of people that don't feel comfortable in crowds right now. They just don't. They don't feel comfortable yet. And that's okay. And we want to make room for people. So next week we're going to 9:30 and one at 11. We're going to also ask that people that are a part of Manna Church, if you consider yourself a member, membership, we kind of hold that term a little loose here at Manna. But if you consider yourself a part of Manna Church, I want you to consider, if you've already, especially if you've been a part of the growth track, you already know what I'm going to say. We believe in the idea or the model of serve one, attend one. And the idea of that is because when we come to church on Sunday mornings to the service, it's not just about us, right? It's about God has called us as his people to serve other people. So I want you to consider, if you're a part here at Man Church, to serve one and attend one. One service is just for you. You just come and attend. In fact, I would ask that you don't serve in both services if you can. I know the worship team and some of the service folks, they have to, but they get to participate in some of the service too. If you're a part of Man of Kids, don't serve in both services. In fact, really, I would ask you not to serve in both services because you can't give what you don't have. Right? God's idea is that we're going to serve out of our overflow. We're going to serve out of what runs out of our cup. And the example I've given before is don't think of a cup like this. Think of a cup like this. How are you going to put water in a cup that you hold upside down? Well, only God can put that put the water in a cup that's upside down. And whatever is extra, that's what we give. Well, we want to attend. We want to attend a service. We want to be just for us. Come and sing and connect to God. But don't just do that. Serve one service too. Serve and attend and invite and believe that God is going to have some great things for us here at Manna Church. Don't stay for you, in other words, stay for others. On January 24th, we're going to have Small Group Sunday. If you want to lead a group coming up in the spring cycle, I need to know shortly, very soon. So over the next couple of weeks, text me, let me know, call me, send me an email. I'd love to get some info about a group that you're thinking about. Maybe God's put some things, maybe even in this service that we've been talking about, maybe God's put some things in your heart that you know that God wants you to start this next group, to serve in an area in that way. I would love for you guys to do that. If anybody's interested, if you haven't been through Growth Track before you lead a group, we'd love for you to go through the Growth Track just so we're all on the same page. So that'll be January 24th. And then, of course, just so you guys know, our Rock series is coming up in February. That'll be 3 weeks long, February 14th through the 28th. I'm really excited about that. Much more information on that, and you guys can just stay tuned for that. So as we close, I really just want to remind you of this verse. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun. You know, every day when we get up, we have a great new opportunity to live in a world where God has given us salvation for free. He's allowed us to be his people and to live around a group of people that need him desperately. Our walk is growing slowly. I get that, and that's okay. But I promise you, if you've taken even one step to know that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, you can lead someone else to him. You can. It doesn't just have to be here on Sunday morning. I mean, you can invite them here on Sunday morning, and I hope to preach a gospel every week in a clear enough way and give people an opportunity to be able to know him. But you can do that too. To be honest with you, in the coming months and years, as the church transforms and morphs, I really think that personal evangelism, the need for personal evangelism is going to grow and grow and grow. And you're going to see that even in training and things that we do this year at Manna Church. We have to be able to be at the place where we can help people come to know Jesus at our workplace, at our lunchroom table. We have to be able to do that. God has put in you the hope of the gospel. Don't think that you can't. I don't have a Bible degree. That doesn't matter. You don't have to know one Bible verse to share the hope that God has put in you and that you live with every single day. Because God's transformed your marriage. And when you sit with somebody and they're having marriage trouble, you can tell them, hey man, you know what? I've had marriage trouble too. Man, my wife and I, we've had marriage trouble. I mean, this isn't just an analogy. This is true. We've had marriage trouble. But our marriage is different than it was 20 years ago when we got married because we've let God do some things in our lives. Are we perfect? No. But I would tell anybody that's having marriage trouble, hey, let me show you how we do things in our marriage. We're not perfect, but I promise you, God's ways work, and he's transformed some things in our marriage, and you can have a great marriage just like we do because we have a great marriage, and you can too. But just go before God and just welcome in the new year. It's going to look different for everybody, but I hope at Manna Church there is a part where we are all connected. We are all connected. I'll just say that. So when you think about what God's doing in you, think about how it could connect to Manna Church. Father, I come before you. Lord, I thank you. I thank you for this new year. I thank you, God, for who you are. Lord, I pray, God, that as this new year starts, Lord, that you would fill us with your power. You'd fill us with your strength. You'd fill us with your spirit, Lord. Help us to be a great year, Lord. Even prophetically, Lord, I just declare over this church, Father, that you would be with us. You would guide us. Let us rise up with power, Father. You have not called us to be a church of little scared Christians in the corner, Father. But instead, you've called us to be your church. We have your